All right, everyone, before I call this meeting to order, we're going to go over the housekeeping for this. We are going to stay on very strict time here. You want to come up? So each person, we have 3 people testifying. Everybody will be limited to 20 minutes. If you do under 20 minutes, that would be greatly appreciated. I'm going to leave 15 minutes for questions from members of the committee. Chair Maloney and I will each take 5 minutes for remarks or comments or questions. This meeting is going to be over on or at or before 10:30. I want this to stay friendly. There will be no derogatory remarks about any person or entity in this room today. So please temper your testimony and your questions as such. We are 6 years into this process already. We're here to give information to the members of this committee. We are not here to argue with anyone. We are not here to call out anyone for their actions. We've all been through this. We all know what happened. We have a lot of information already. Right now, we're going to just present information so that we can perhaps let the members of the committee and the commissioners hear opinions and then go from there on what we do 6 years into this process. Again, we all know this is the job of the commission right now. So we're here for informational purposes only. Again, everybody, please behave yourselves today, okay? I'd like to call this meeting of the House Game and Fisheries Committee to order. This is an informational meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to address the Pennsylvania Game Commission's 2019 decision to change the opening day of the regular antlered deer hunting season. Erin, do you want to do roll call?
Chair Kulik. Rep Davison. Leave. Rep Doherty.
Here.
Rep Gentz. Rep Haddock.
Designation here.
Rep Harris.
Designation here. Oh, is he on? Oh, he's on virtual. He's here.
Rep Hohenstein.
Here.
Rep Inglis.
Designation here.
Rep Kazim.
Designation here.
Rep Matsey.
Designation here.
Rep Mirsky.
He is on virtual.
Rep Rusnick.
He's on, is it virtual? Virtual.
Rep Still.
Virtual.
And Rep Young.
Virtual.
Chair Maloney. Rep Anderson. Rep Banta. Rep Cook. Rep DeVanzo. Rep Kerwin. Rep Kuzma. Rep Labs. Rep Allsummer. Rep Reichert. Rep Smith. And Rep Wentling. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And I'd like to also add, because we are trying to be very respectful of the time, that the committee members have this morning. Everybody has a lot going on today, and as we're ending and leaving some time for questions, I would ask that any of the folks testifying, the commissioners, et cetera, please stay after if you can, in the event that any of the members of the committee have any further questions. And so the members know, obviously, we all have opinions on this topic. You are welcome, of course, to use the information received today in any way you want to do, social media-wise, et cetera. So, but we are going to respect the time of this meeting so that members can get to other meetings. We'll be hearing from Steve Smith, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Game Commission, Randy Santucci, Southwest Regional Director of the
Yes.
Unified Sportsmen of Pennsylvania.
We have an invitation for you to come to our legislative conference.
Yes.
Can,
Okay, well, thank you.
Rep Harris, can
So
you
was this
mute,
your,
please? Rep Harris,
Rita?
please mute.
So we're
And Mike Kreiner of the Pennsylvania Federation of Sportsmen and Conservationists. Again, we're going to hold any questions or comments till after all have testified. Director Smith, you're up.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Kulik, Chairman Maloney, members of the House Game and Fisheries Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning and discuss this matter with you. Before I jump into my testimony, I did want to acknowledge 3 of our Board of Commissioners who were able to attend today. We have Stan Knick, he's the president of our board from the Northeast. Next to him is Bob Schwalem and Alan DeMarco. So 3 members of our Board of Commissioners are here.
Being, okay.
Absolutely. And before I get in, just if you'll indulge me just a second, because I know we have some new members of the committee, I just wanted to briefly talk about how the commission is structured. So the Game Commission, as well as our Board of Commissioners, are created by statute, and it's Title 34, the Game and Wildlife Code. That creates the commission, that defines our duties and responsibilities. It also creates our Board of Commissioners. And within the statute, there are 9 members on our board. They represent come from 9 different districts across the state. They are appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, and they serve 4-year terms, and those can be up to 3 4-year terms. I wanted to provide that context because in my testimony I'll refer to our board, and I wanted you to know who I was referring to. As I said, their powers and their duties are defined by law, and that primarily, I can condense down, their primary responsibility is to manage the wildlife in Pennsylvania and to do so through regulated hunting and trapping seasons. And of course, we are here today to talk about one of those seasons. In particular, the change in the start date for the firearms deer season, which traditionally started on the Monday after Thanksgiving and then was moved to a Saturday. This is a decision that has undoubtedly sparked passionate debate, but it's also a decision that prioritizes participation, accessibility, and the long-term sustainability of hunting in the Commonwealth. To understand how we got here, we must first recognize the historical context that has shaped hunting in Pennsylvania. This goes back to the 19th and early 20th centuries, when Pennsylvania's forests in the northern tier were heavily timbered to fuel the railroad and iron industries. After the timbering operations had ceased, those mountainsides eventually became home to a dense young forested habitat, creating ideal conditions for a booming deer population. Now, this coincided with the return of World War II veterans who found exceptional hunting in those northern counties. Families and friends bought land in these areas and formed hunting camps, and an entire culture emerged around the annual firearms deer season pilgrimage to these locations. To accommodate these hunters, the Game Commission established the firearms deer season opener on the Monday after Thanksgiving. The 3-day gap allowed time to travel, which particularly then could take the better part of a day to get from counties like Allegheny, Lancaster, and Berks to places such as McKean, Potter, and Tioga. A Monday opener incorporated that travel time and allowed for the ability to open camp, scout, and prepare for the upcoming season. For decades, this tradition thrived, and anyone who experienced it no doubt recalls fondly the memories that it made. However, as the forest in those areas matured, they could no longer sustain the high deer populations that were once in those counties. In addition, the deer population was no longer condensed in just the northern tier, but had spread statewide. As a result, hunter behavior started to change. More hunters began staying closer to home, focusing on local farmland and woodlots where they had a high likelihood of success. Around that same time, something else was taking place. Hunting participation was declining. From 1982 to 2018, and 2018 is the last year of the Monday opener, hunting license sales decreased by 529,000 license buyers. That averages out to losing over 14,000 hunters a year, every year, for 36 years in a row. If the decline continues at that same rate, we'll have gone from over 1.3 million licensed buyers in 1982 to approximately half of that by 2035. And that is just part of the reality that we face. The other part is that our hunters were and are aging. In 1982, less than 4% of hunters were 65 or older. By 2018, that number had quadrupled. If that trend continues, by 2035, more than a quarter of the Pennsylvania hunters that remain will be eligible for a senior license. When researchers ask hunters why they stop participating, the answer is clear. They don't have the time needed to devote to the sport. A U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service survey found that 40% of lapsed hunters cited time constraints as their main reason for leaving the sport, making it the #1 obstacle to continued participation. This is because hunting requires planning, time off work, and travel, luxuries that fewer people can afford in today's busy world. These statistics are not just numbers. They are a call to action, because hunting is the backbone of conservation. No one does more to support wildlife and wild places than hunters. A decline in hunting participation threatens not just the future of the sport, but generations of progress made on behalf of our wildlife resources. It was against this backdrop and for these reasons that in 2019, the Board of Commissioners voted to move the opening day of firearms deer season to a Saturday. Given that hunting participation was declining and a lack of free time was the biggest reason for the decline, the board prioritized the need to make hunting more accessible and inclusive, especially on the biggest day of the hunting calendar in Pennsylvania. In the years since then, younger hunters, in particular, have benefited from this change. For many, a Monday opener made the season simply inaccessible. Prior to the Saturday opener, the hope was that these young hunters would accept missing out for a few years, but then return to the sport later on in life when they had more time. Some did, but undoubtedly some did not. The Saturday opener changed that, offering a chance for younger hunters to stay engaged with the sport during those formative years. Research has long shown that constant exposure to hunting and the positive experiences that it creates is the key to retaining younger generation. But it's not just the younger hunters who have benefited. For hunters of all ages, the Saturday opener makes it more convenient to participate. For working adults, it eliminates the need to take unpaid leave or use vacation days to hunt. For those with young children, it reduces the need to make childcare arrangements. These are very real obstacles that can't be ignored, especially if we want to make hunting more accessible to a broader audience. Widespread recognition of the benefits of the Saturday opener was reflected in the results of a 2021 survey conducted by Responsive Management, a renowned research firm specializing in outdoor issues. The survey revealed that a clear majority of Pennsylvania hunters, 60%, supported starting the season on a Saturday, while only 27% opposed the change and 13% had no preference. Of the 60% who supported the change, they stated that it increased their hunting opportunities and better coincided with their work and children's school schedules. These were the very reasons the Saturday opener was implemented and the effects that it was designed to achieve. What is also significant about the 2021 survey is that it reflected a substantial shift in hunter preferences compared to surveys that had been conducted prior to the change. In the past, when hunters were asked which day they preferred to start the season, the majority answered Monday. However, just 3 years after the Saturday opener was implemented and hunters had the opportunity to experience the benefits, those preferences reversed. Hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvania hunters came to believe that the Saturday opener enhanced their experience. I'd like to share 2 stories from hunters that our board has received in the past few days that illustrate how the Saturday opener has improved the hunting experience for many. One hunter recently wrote to the Board of Commissioners, imploring them to keep the Saturday start date. Quote, "When I began hunting, I didn't have anyone in my family who hunted, so it was very difficult to get out. The opening day on Monday made it impossible for me to take off work. Now that it starts on a Saturday and with Sunday available, I am finally able to hunt on the first 2 days of the season." End quote. Another hunter shared a similar sentiment, writing, quote, "Starting the deer season on Saturday benefits most hunters in Pennsylvania. I no longer have to take unpaid time off from work. And my son was able to hunt on opening weekend all 4 years of college. The Saturday and Sunday opener coincided with his Thanksgiving break. Expanding the season to open on Saturday has provided more opportunities for PA hunters." End quote. These voices reflect what the survey data confirms. The Saturday opener is expanding opportunities for hunters, young and old. The decision to change the opening day was not made lightly, nor without consideration of the concerns surrounding it. The board recognizes that some hunters value the traditions tied to the Monday opener, especially those associated with the hunting camp experience. These traditions hold deep meaning, and the board respects the passion behind them. However, it is important to balance tradition with the pressing need to ensure the future of the sport. The board has remained committed to the Saturday opener because it is the right choice for the future of hunting. It keeps younger hunters engaged, eliminates barriers for working adults, and enables families to spend time together outdoors. The Saturday opener is more than a scheduling change. It's a commitment to Pennsylvania's hunters, wildlife, and the future of conservation. Thank you again for the opportunity to discuss the impact of the Saturday opener on a sport that holds deep meaning for so many of us.
Thank you, Director. Mr. Santucci, you're up.
Thanks, Dave. To present testimony here in front of the the committee.
Mr. Santucci, why don't we do this? Why don't we have all four of you identify yourselves and just let us know who you are?
Good idea.
Thank you.
My name is Randy Santucci. I'm here representing a byproduct of Unified, which is our organization, Hunters Against the Saturday Deer Opener, and our Facebook page, currently with over 5,500 members.
Good morning, Jennifer Guerrero, and I'm here representing the same groups.
I'm Jim Daly. I was a commissioner with the Game Commission until 2019, and I'm the one that suggested the Saturday opener.
And Dan DeVillo. I worked with Randy from the beginning, came into this about 5 years ago. And I'm with the Hunters Against the Saturday Opener and Opening Day Sportsman podcast. So, thank you.
Well, thank you all for allowing us to speak today. As I said, I served on the board for 4+ years. I left in June of 2019. I'm a hunter ed instructor. I've been doing that for 47 years. I started doing work for PFSC at the county level 50 years ago. And most recently, I served as Lawrence County delegate and Northwest Division treasurer. I ceased to be a member on August 20 when the PFSC published a stand that the PFSC believes that ballot box biology is the greatest threat to hunting and wildlife management in PA.
Could you please use the speaker?
Sorry about that. They also claim that, there's more people that favor a Saturday opener, but their website doesn't have an opener survey under PFSC resolutions and surveys. Lastly, I'm a proud 6-stage giving back hunter. I have some handouts if you want to look. There's something that describes the stages of hunters, and I'm the 6th stage. So the history of the Saturday opener. When I was on the board, as Steve said, we were really concerned about declining hunter numbers. So I suggested that we move the firearms opener to a Saturday to possibly help with recruitment. I recognized at the time that when proposing a Saturday opener, which was unanimously approved as a proposed regulation, it would trigger a 60-day public comment period. And I was happy to see that. We received 1,152 public comments. 82% were opposed to the proposed change to a Saturday. 82% opposed raised a lot of valid concerns that I considered. They had numerous family obligations associated with Thanksgiving, Saturday being too close. They lost time to prepare, anticipate time, and the 24% of people that hunted from camps were especially impacted. There were a lot of economic losses for rural and retail establishments, including restaurants, small convenience, variety stores, gun shops, gas stations, you name it, in the rural communities. Economic losses also were hit by nonprofit organizations that held fundraising events over the weekend. And there was a disproportionate negative impact on what everyone calls older hunters. But these are your 5th and 6th stage hunters who understand the vital importance of fellowship, camaraderie, and passing the knowledge on to new hunters. I read every comment that came in, and I replied to every one of them, believe it or not. Public comments made it clear the Monday opener that it stood for 60 years because it had made sense, and it should remain. I begged the board to vote down my proposed changes. Sadly, the Saturday change passed by a 5-3 vote. The 5 commissioners that voted to go to Saturday ignored the prior hunter surveys, overwhelming public comments regarding real adverse social and economic impacts. I left the board shortly after a Saturday opener was adopted, not because of the decision itself, but because the majority was unable to weigh all the available data, science, and comments to apply sound judgment to achieve the balance.
Can you please be careful? We're not going to say anything.
Okay. Well, what I was saying was that there is supposed to be a balanced management philosophy that was in the commissioner's manual. So the bottom line, PGC really didn't evaluate the litany of social and economic impacts. It justifies the change based on a potentially slower decline in hunting license sales and a hasty telephone survey during the months of November and December when dedicated hunters were in the woods. Based on PGC's desired age distribution to achieve a representative samples, the surveys oversampled last-minute license buyers, undersampled the 46-year-old hunters and older, which is half of all hunters, by 6.6%, and of course oversampled the hunters that were 45 and younger by the same amount. Therefore, hunters mostly in their earlier stages of development, the shoot anything stage, the limit out stage, the trophy stage, and the new method stage, absolutely skewed results in favor of Saturday. You've been duly elected to serve your districts and ultimately all citizens of the Commonwealth, not just the 6% that hunt. I considered all hunters and all others when seeking to have my proposal defeated. As members of this committee, you not only have the right to get involved in PG decisions that are not biologically driven, but a duty to all your constituents. You will be inundated with conflicting license sales figures and hunter survey preference surveys, but these indicators completely ignore the much broader social and economic impacts that continue to be ignored. You should be insulted, as I was, that many groups came out claiming that regarding this opening day that stood for 60 years, it was ballot box biology. Unlike organizations raising these false claims, I trust that you are smart enough to recognize when decisions need to be based on biological principles and when decisions clearly are in no way biologically driven.
Okay, again, I'll caution everyone to not, we're going to stick to information and facts. We're not going to make comments about any person or entity in the room today. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I have a minute here? So I want to thank you guys for being here. You actually are more of the voice of the sportsman. And I'm going to say something that I'm a little bit conflicted with my counter chair. Words matter. Facts matter. I have come here, I have been here for 7, now going on 8 terms. So what I would say, I understand disparaging anybody, but facts matter. And what people say matters. And these are factual things that have historically taken place with this commission and the things that have been done to decide these issues. So proceed with caution, but you will get defended by me every day if you keep with facts and words that were said. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, again, thank you, and for the committee. I just want to reinforce the fact that what was supposed to be assessed by the Board of Commissioners regarding this issue was ignored. The 2017 survey, which was mentioned by Director Smith, staff presentations were non-supportive. The Game Commission's Hunter Outreach Coordinator, which I could probably identify him by name, which is Mr. Derek Stoner, issued a statement early on in this process, and may I read part of this? What I've heard from a variety of hunters, and particularly the younger age demographic, is that their likelihood of participation or increased participation in hunting and deer hunting, particularly with that Saturday opener, would not be positively changed at all. He went on to identify conflicting openers in surrounding states and a rate conflict with hunters with camps that were going to drop out over this, so you weren't going to gain anything, basically. And he finished with the statement, I don't believe it's a valuable decision or move to change the opener simply based on the potential, unproven potential, to draw in a brand new audience of participants. And that came from their Hunter Outreach Coordinator. Moving on to address the survey, it was stated to the board by their Hunter Outreach, or excuse me, their Hunter Dimension Specialist, Miss Dr. Jagno, regarding identifying an aspect of historical survey data. And what that aspect is, that hunters that say yes on a particular survey, that they would increase participation, actually could be a little to a lot less in actual participation. So she actually identified that there was one survey done in 2011 that hunters said they would participate, and only 39% actually bought a license after saying they would. So the 60% number that we're being put to here on that survey is actually it's blown up inside of its own survey. If you look at pages 12, 15, 18, and 19, which are provided in this packet, it asks the question in 2020, did you hunt the opening day? That's what this is all about anyway. And of the ones that stated that they did hunt the opening day, only less than 2% identified that it was because of the Saturday opener, less than 2%. The same question was asked in 2021. Did you hunt the opening day? And again, the participation was identified, or what influenced them, was less than 2% because of the Saturday opener. It was everything but the Saturday opener. 98% was tradition, nothing else. So it shows how little impact this had on actual increasing participation for the 2 years of that survey. Moving on, and Director Smith had confirmed that with us. I wanted to be sure of this, so we asked him that question in Harrisburg, and he said, yes, that's a fact that historical survey results are, and it proved, Dr. Jagna was proved to be accurate. The board identified there was a mistake, I believe, in April 2024 when they made the statement, we have fractured and divided the hunters of Pennsylvania with this decision. And for the benefit of the new committee members, I testified in front of this committee with Anita here 2020. Same topic, same issues, nothing's changed in 5 years. But if the chairs remember here that Commissioner Fredericks made the statement, the problem here is Thanksgiving. No small problem. That came from Commissioner Fredericks. I have a statement from Commissioner Mike Mitrix from a newspaper when he was interviewed. I support a Saturday opener, but I just don't like the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Almost everyone that sends in a comment says it's too rushed, and it is, Mitrix stated. Now, that's two commissioners that have thrown high question marks into this decision. Commissioner Todd Pride has reached out to me, and I give him credit, I like Todd, and he was trying to find a regional benefit here or solution. And I go back to the question, why are we looking for a solution if there's not a problem? And that's a third commissioner now that's questioning this decision. And I'd like to kind of end up with this certainly is not a social thing. We're going to identify some economic damages. And may I kind of, 82% of our schools are still closed on Sunday. And may I state that, I guess, how bad of an idea is it to put the most participated deer season opening day smack dab in the middle of the most traveled family holiday of the year? If we don't see conflicts from that, and these are some of the main issues that have led to problems with as the tradition losses and things like that. So I'd like to pass on out to my partner Dan DeVilla with the economic side of this thing, and thank you.
Executive Director Gulick, Chairman Maloney, and members of the Game and Fisheries, thank you for having us here today. What I'm going to read is some letters from Chamber of Commerce across the state. We have a sample of them. These are current letters over the last few weeks where we've been getting in touch. But we also have in this packet, when you go to Economics tab, you'll see that we have other pieces in there. These are from the individuals that this was impacted. It's not something that we wrote. This is their words, and this is to you or to us. The first one is from Julie Henry. Greetings, Dan. I'd like to take a moment to thank you for your continued efforts to return the opening day of deer season to Monday. The rural communities in Pennsylvania deeply counted on outside dollars in hunting season that it brings in. Moving the opening day to Saturday has negatively impacted those communities. The community of Wellsboro, anybody here familiar with Wellsboro? Got quite a hotel and restaurant chain. It's really a nice place. Is blessed with family-owned and operated businesses. The once full hotels and restaurants lined, and the grocery stores and the gas stations are gone. Since the change opening day Saturday, members of the Chamber of Commerce have seen profits decrease in excess of 65%. One of the key restaurants that I personally would attend was the Steakhouse. You couldn't get in there at 6 o'clock on a Friday night with a 2-hour wait. When we went in there after this enacted, you could go in and just sit down. Hunting by nature is a rural activity. The impact of the season on the rural communities needs to be taken into the utmost consideration. I urge the Game Commission to support Pennsylvania's rural areas and return opening day back to Monday. And I want to point out another thing to some of the new members on here. Pennsylvania has more camp owners, more highways, rural roads than any state in the United States. Now think about that, and I'm going to bring something up to you. Game Commission has probably more money than any agency I've ever seen in a sports field and the biology. So it's not just deer biology, they're in the real estate business. They're buying up more land, habitat, and really struggling to maintain that. We have a CWD issue, and they're buying land off the counties and taking it off the tax rolls. So that's less money for the counties to take care of the highways. This was an epic failure at biblical proportions. We're talking about millions of dollars here. Millions. If you folks and your constituents, you want to have a nice rebounding sales year, move this thing back. Make Monday the deer holiday that it should be. By everybody's admission, this has nothing to do with deer biology. And yes, I cringe at the fact that, we've had some people say, do we really want legislature involved in changing the setting bag limits and seasons? Not really, but we had no choice. For 5 years, we've been coming to first Burhan's, who was out selling the snake oil.
Excuse me. Please watch your comments.
Sorry about that. I retract that. I apologize. And then now Smith, who was doing. I think he's reached out to us. It's been very cordial. But the bottom line is, we're looking at a voting commissioner base of 0-36. 0-36. For 5 years, we've not had any commissioner publicly support the change. And quite frankly, I'm just shocked. I've never seen anyone vote with a voting record like that, ever. You can't get people to agree on most things. We have a bill introduced, it's bipartisan support, and we hope that you folks will really, all we want is to have this get the fair shake it deserves. That's it. Just a fair shake. Really look at it, both sides of it. Not calling names. Anyway, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank
You've
you.
got under 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, respectfully to the committee, I really can't even get started into my testimony of what I wanted to share today. I'm happy to send it via email, and I do really hope that you read it and understand my perspective, female hunter in her 30s. I do have a lot to say about the topic. But really, I'm here today to talk about solutions. We have to be forward thinking. We have to right the wrongs that exist today. And that's really my purpose. And I think that everybody in this room has a duty to uphold as it relates to this issue. We know the Game Commission, if you guys can just stick with your mission, we'll be good, right? Part one, as Steve Smith shared, is to manage and protect wildlife and their habitats. If we go back and look at the statewide deer hunter surveys in 2011, 2014, and 2017, lack of deer was actually the #1 issue. But license sales remained steady until about 2017, and that's when hunters began to get discouraged and license sales started to decrease. And for those of you thinking, well, I see deer all the time in my region, you might be right, but those are probably areas where they cannot be hunted. People aren't going to go sit in the woods when they don't see the deer. It allows for an easier shift of priorities and what they choose to do with their time. And part two, mission is to promote hunting and trapping for future and current generations. We can't make decisions that divide and fracture our hunters, and we can't dismiss, disregard, and especially not discriminate against our primary sources of recruitment, retention, and reactivation. As current hunters, we're responsible to help build the hunting community. That's our job, that's our duty, and we are here to help the Game Commission with that. State legislators, as we're here today, continue to represent your constituents and take meaningful action. And when issues arise, please help us to find appropriate resolution. What you do to address these socioeconomic issues will reveal how far you're willing to go for all of your constituents, which include non-hunters, businesses, and the community at large. So I have options for what happens from here. Like I said, I'm not going to be able to get into the details today, unfortunately, but I will send this to you all, and I truly hope that you do take the time to read it. In closing, Nelson Mandela once said, "Everything seems impossible until it is done." Change is really hard, but when the data supports it and the case is justified, it is necessary. And if you take away just one item from today, please remember that the data collected by our PGC professionals before the opener was changed pointed every single board member to remain with Monday. And what I'll never understand is why our science-based game commission actually went against the science.
Thank you. Thank you, and we'll be looking forward to that email.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kreiner.
Sorry about that. Everyone hear me okay? Just wanted to make sure I had everything here. My guess is we'll probably do Q&A after, so I'll put all my stuff here for questions. So with that, Chair Kulik, Chair Maloney, and honorable members of the House Game and Fisheries Committee, as some of you know, my name is Mike Kreiner. I'm a lobbyist in Harrisburg, represent 12 to 13 different clients, depending on what time of the year it is. And I do have the pleasure of today representing the Pennsylvania Federation of Sportsmen and Conservationists. I'm going to refer to them as a PFSC. Some of the other members, our speakers did, just so I don't have to kind of repeat that.
Sir, could you just explain, there's county chapters and there's a state chapter. So who exactly do you represent?
Yes, sir, and I appreciate that. I was going to get that in my testimony, but I appreciate the question.
Didn't know. Anybody new here?
So the PFSC is a bottom-up organization. At one time was mostly clubs in the state of Pennsylvania. The organization is left from when I first started in Harrisburg as the Pennsylvania Federation of Sportsmen's Clubs, and it's since turned into same acronym, but the Pennsylvania Federation of Sportsmen and Conservationists. So that has changed since I started in the Capitol in 1991. It goes from the bottom up, like I said. That's the clubs, other members. There are county chapters, as a certain speaker before, who I absolutely respect and love, mentioned that he was a county chapter representative for the Federation. The chapters report up through to regional board members, and then the regional board members report up to the board. So the testimony that I will read from part of it today has been signed off on by our 6 board members for the PFSC who report down through the local level. So I hope, Mr. Chairman, that answers it. I'm happy to get into more detail.
Well, I just thought it would be interesting that some of my colleagues who may not understand is that there isn't a necessary 66 or 67 county chapters, because there are those that refuse to organize with your agency. So it's important to know that you're here representing, as a lobbyist, a group from out of state that, yes, may represent a state chapter, but not necessarily a county where you live. So that's important.
So, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, and I really appreciate you mentioning, asking me to provide more information on the PFSC, I do disagree with your assertion that we're an out-of-state organization. I will say, as a member of the Lebanon County Federation Board or chapter, we have, I apologize for not getting into this yet, 70,000 members of our organization. It fluctuates. We're probably up closer to 75,000 today. Are there members that aren't from Pennsylvania? There could be. But I will say the vast majority of our members historically and today are from Pennsylvania. So I do disagree with that assertion. And
Well, that
it's with all
wasn't
due-
what I actually said. You're headquartered out of state. The headquarters of this organization has always come from a president outside the state of Pennsylvania. That's all I was referring to.
Okay. I disagree with that point, but
Madam Chair Lady,
Yes.
the other people that testified were not cut in and interrupted by this board. I would ask that this person testifying has the same right as the other testifiers. He should not be interrupted during his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you continue, please,
sure.
with your testimony?
Sure. Yep. Absolutely. And I'm happy to answer any questions afterward or during, whatever the preference is. So real quick, the intro again. I mentioned that I am a lobbyist in Harrisburg. I have the pleasure, this is one of my few clients that I represent, I have a personal interest in as far as 42 years of hunting, many generations of hunters that I come from. I've hunted the local farm fields of Lebanon County and mountains, as well as camps up in Tioga County and Bradford County. As I talked about, the Federation was formed in 1932. We currently have somewhere between 70 and 75,000 members, made up of sportsmen, sportswomen, conservationists in every region of the Commonwealth. And I do appreciate one of our board members who's here today, Chuck, drove down from up in the Northeast to be here today. So I appreciate it. And many of them are listening in today. On behalf of the PFSC, I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to participate in today's discussion on this important deer management issue. I'd also like to thank each one of you as public servants. And I absolutely mean this. Having been a Senate staffer for 12 years, it was easy for me as a staffer to walk into the grocery store back home and no one asked me questions. You can't go anywhere in your life without people hitting you. And I know most of you enjoy that or appreciate it, but I thank you for that. Like many other constituencies, our hunting community fights for what we believe in and hold so dear. In doing so, we need to make sure we do it respectfully. And I honestly mean that. I will speak to that today if asked. And I mentioned that at every single opportunity I have to talk about this issue and others. I do it at every single Pennsylvania Game Commission board meeting, and I'll do it again today. I will get back to my written remarks, but I do want to say a couple things kind of off the cuff, as I do at every single Game Commission quarterly meeting. I tell everybody as a lobbyist, I get paid to do this, but everyone in the Commonwealth is a lobbyist. If you truly believe in something, you'll fight for it. I mentioned all of my colleagues, some that spoke today in the hunting community. Show up, talk. Let's do it in between board meetings. Let's work through issues. I always mention that we're part of the greater hunting family, even if we disagree on issues. 1 out of every 13 Pennsylvanians right now are hunters, give or take. It's a smaller segment of our population than when it was, even when I started in Harrisburg in 1991. Even though we might disagree, we still have to come together and respect one another as we're doing it. I will say, and I know this is unfair or might be taken out of context, I equate this as a typical family, like a dinner around the holidays. We have the best of intentions. Sometimes we get a little bit hot under the collar. We need to work through things. Again, my testimony has been signed off by all 6 of our board members that report down to the local level. This testimony today, both my written testimony and my remarks, I've written for U.S. congressional and Senate candidates, President Pro Tem of the State Senate, Fortune 200 company CEOs. It went through 16 drafts. Whether you agree with what I presented on behalf of the PFSC or not, 16 different drafts for our written testimony. I also have the board sign off on every single comment I make in front of the Game Commission at their quarterly meetings. Sometimes I ad lib, as I am right now, but for the most part, it stays to the point. We do have passionate beliefs. And there are indeed feelings on both sides of it. So with that, I'm going to get into part of my written testimony, I'm going to be respectful of time because I think Q&A is going to be very good, but I'll try to be on point if possible. Let me just say, I've only represented the PFSC for 4 years. I was not at the table when the decision made was in 2019 by the Game Commission as to changing the opening day of deer season. But I have spoken with a lot of the individuals, including some that are here today that used to be part of our organization or some that still are. It's clear there was not full agreement back then on what was being done. Change is difficult, and there were a lot of concerns. But, and I'll get to this in my testimony, the trends that we were seeing from a license sale perspective and our volunteer hunters that helped to manage our deer herd, it was going in a bad direction. And so it is part of the discussion, I'm sure, that happened at the time. And I think the best way to explore kind of what I'm going to get into is just to kind of highlight some of my written testimony. You know, I'll start as, and I'm kind of repeating myself here, in-person communication, as probably all of you, you know, encounter through your days as an elected official, in-person communication is key. Over the last 4 years, as I mentioned before, I've listened and I've spoken at every single quarterly Game Commission board meeting. It's an opportunity to hear from people that agree with the PFSC's position and not, or the Game Commission. And I value that. I always try to make sure I speak last, like today. It gets me off of point on my written comments, but I like to try to bring everything together in the end to say, we are part of a greater family, and we need to kind of, it gets back to my point earlier, if one of 13 Pennsylvanians on an average basis today are hunters, even if we disagree, we need to try to come together if possible, because others will try to tear us apart. So I will say that the PFSC does participate in regular policy discussions with a larger group of hunting and wildlife groups. And I'm going to list kind of who they are on this issue. These groups do have taken a position on House Bill 70 and this issue in general. But we want to be part of the conversation, and we want to be respectful to the constituencies of those individuals that are bringing it up. I will say with regard to House Bill 70, Representative Smith, I know that we really haven't worked on many issues since you've been elected to the House. I respect you and I appreciate it. I know you're representing your constituencies. Thank you. It'd be a lot easier for me to be here today to say we're in full agreement with everyone that's in front of us here. And that my clients, we support all 4,000 some bills that are introduced in a 2-year legislative session. That just doesn't happen. Conversations need to occur, and kind of we get to, you know, try to work our differences. And that's where we are here. But I do, again, we respect as a PFSC everybody that's part of this process, including those that currently don't agree with us. I will say, as I mentioned, the PFSC and these other wildlife groups do oppose House Bill 70. It's currently introduced. And we do so in respect to the sponsor and his constituency, but we're doing it because we believe the Game Commission is best suited to make this decision right now, not through the statutory process. I'm going to list real quickly. I'm here representing the PFSC, but I'm going to list the other members of the policy work group that signed a letter and submitted to the committee. It's probably in your packet, that they oppose House Bill 70 as currently introduced. They include backcountry hunters and anglers, Delta waterfowl, Ducks Unlimited, Hunters for Sunday Hunting, the National Deer Association, the National Wild Turkey Federation, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, the Rough Grouse Society, American Woodcock Society, and Safari Club International. I mention that only because those organizations and the PFSC and others sit down on a weekly and monthly basis and hash out issues such as this, with the understanding we can try to come together with a unified front to sit down and talk to you and your colleagues and the members in the Senate and the governor's office on kind of what we're hearing from around our organizations. Not all of them are statewide organizations, and I'm sure I'll be asked that question, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there. We also most recently have been dealing with the Pennsylvania Farm Bureau, a group that historically has been opposed by our organization on certain policy issues, but I mentioned that they're in support of the Game Commission having the decision here, and also a group by the name of Hunter Nation. So all groups that I respect, work with on a regular basis, and they've taken a position on this issue. I will say again, and I mention this at every Game Commission board meeting, there are usually members that are here that are speaking on a different side of an issue than me, and they want to go to the Game Commission or to the legislature for a solution because they don't believe the Game Commission is representing them. Their words, not mine. What I will say is this, having worked in the process, the state legislative process, structurally, the way it's set up, is not intended to do quick turnaround change issues of policy intentionally. It's so that if something happens in the Commonwealth on a Friday, for the most part, they're not taking action legislatively and changing it on Monday, because over time, it might have been a knee-jerk reaction. So I mention it only because we truly believe from a process perspective, allowing the Game Commission to oversee seasons and bag limits and make those modifications throughout the year, every year, is something that we as a organization truly believe in. The approval process. You know, I mentioned that the vote that happened back, and I think it was previously mentioned in 2019 by the Game Commission, it was a 5-3 vote. Clearly was not unanimous. I've sat through, like I said, every single Game Commission public meeting, talked to people on both sides, tried to talk about, you know, what did happen. A speaker earlier has been very helpful to me to understand the process and the history. There's no clear consensus on what happened back then. My point is, and maybe it's unfair because I'm in a position right now where the Game Commission supports kind of, or is moving forward on this decision, and we support the Game Commission having that choice. We would say, let's look at where things are at today. Clearly look at the history behind it, but where are we at today? And that's the next part of my conversation here. I will say that on January 25th of this year, there was a 9-0 vote by the commission, preliminary approval to have seasons and bag limits move through all the seasons. They approved a Saturday opener for rifle deer season. And that'll be something that I get to later here as to where we're at in that process. The Game Commission does have to come back in April to provide final approval for that. So the process is not fully played out, but I think that's important. There were some very pointed items of rebuttal that the testimony I presented to the committee might have been raw from our perspective. I will say quickly before I get into the testimony again, not all of our organization, including folks that are former members of the PFSC that are here today, were comfortable or happy with the way it played out back in 2019. We have 70,000 members in our organization. Not everyone's in alignment with where things are at today, but the vast majority of people have kind of moved on or are indeed supportive. I know that's not a survey or a number to refer to you. I'm just saying that's something I've heard from my organization over the last 4 years. We've kind of moved on a little bit. Some of them were upset about the hearing today. And I told them, look, every opportunity I get to get in front of policymakers, we're going to take it. It's a great opportunity, so thank you. The reason they were upset is it was a raw situation back in 2019. I say moved on not because I'm trying to be flippant or disrespectful. They've adapted. Some are still upset about it, but the vast majority have moved on, and they didn't want to have us rehash something today from a raw emotion perspective. It's clearly still there, and have to relitigate it. I'm not saying that shouldn't happen. It should. We should always have conversations. It's just that's kind of what we're dealing with, and why it took me so many different drafts to come up with something that 6 board members agreed to, and what they were hearing from the various areas. I'm just gonna, how many more minutes do I have? I'll be very quick. 5 different subjects that I think are important to the conversation somewhat: deer population, hunting license sales, economics, impact of overall hunting, and hunting tradition. It's important for the committee to know, and most of you do, the deer population has gone from being driven to the point of extinction back at the turn of the century. One of the main reasons the Game Commission was brought into being back in 1895 was because of that. It was because of commercial hunting, forestry practices at the time, clear cutting. Some of that led to great deer population bounds later, But I just wanted to mention that to you. It's why the Game Commission's role and their mission is to protect all 458, or I think 480 species in the Commonwealth for all Pennsylvanians. What it's led to today is over 400,000 deer harvested through various hunting seasons. That's changed over the last 40 years when it happens in the various seasons. At one time back in the 80s, 1 out of every 10 deer were taken in the archery season. Today, it's 4 out of 10 on average that I understand. So things have changed with time. There are various balancing issues that folks have talked about earlier with regard to wildlife management, deer hunter license numbers, habitat and forest management, whether we're developing property or should have more Game Commission property, public lands versus private lands. It's part of the conversation that they have, my belief is, every year before they make the vote on where they're going with seasons. From a historical perspective of license sales, and I think this is important, from 2013 through 2018, the hunting license sales in Pennsylvania decreased by over 10%. They lost almost 96,000 license sales. What happened in the years after the change to the Saturday opener, and I'm not directly attributing it to just that issue, there are multiple changes that occurred, but historically, or just for facts, the first year license sales increased by over 5,200, and over that 5-year period from 2019 to 2023, it's pretty much been flat. So you go from losing 96,000 licenses before to pretty flat. They've lost in grand total. I don't have this year. I've heard anecdotally it's down, but what I will say is we're still only 7 months into a 12-month sales cycle. So it's not fully vetted numbers, I believe personally. But that 5 years right after the change, it's pretty much been flat. A grand total loss of just over 1,000 licenses. So from 96,000 down to 1,000. So it's part of the equation that occurred. I'm going to skip through the other items, and I'm happy to kind of answer Q&A, but just my quick conclusion is this. The PFSC and these other previously listed hunting organizations support allowing the Game Commission to make the final decision on seasons and bag limits. We believe that it's a full-time job of each and every Pennsylvania Game Commission staff member to study the impacts facing the wildlife and habitat from around the state and to provide the best and most up-to-date advice to the Game Commission board for them to make their decision each and every year. In preparing for today's testimony, I just want to mention this because part of the reason of drafting 18 different testimonies is everyone was hanging on 1 or 2 words. And I know the opposition does the same thing every time I put something out there publicly. So I just want to be very clear with this paragraph. And I'm going to read it because it's important. In preparing for today's presentation, I continue to be pressed from many sides on whether the PFSC's stance was to support the Saturday opener or to support the Game Commission having the authority to set the opener. What I will and have said, and I'm going to say it again here, is that we trust and support the Game Commission having the authority to set the season opener, which they just preliminarily approved to be the Saturday following Thanksgiving on January 25th when they voted. I would also add that our testimony lists many of the reasons, some raw in rebuttal, as I mentioned, but I would add that our testimony lists many of the reasons and thoughts behind supporting the Game Commission's decision to select the Saturday opener this year. Our hunting community, in conclusion, wants to protect our wildlife, our opportunity to hunt, and the Game Commission's continued leadership in protecting what we love. Chairwoman Kulik, Chairman Maloney, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for listening to this. Thank you for being here. I hope this conversation continues. I do. And thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a hard stop at 10:30, so I'm going to take some time right now to see if any of our representatives would like, look, please be mindful of time. If you could take just a minute or two, but we are going to start with Representative Smith because I know he has a bill pending on this issue.
Madam Chair, did you want to bring the other, is that, oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to sit back? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, with this shortened time, I don't want to take a lot of time, but I do want to talk and let everyone understand why we're here today and what brought me to bring this bill to the table. I've been in the legislature for 2 terms. This is my 3rd. I've been in 5. This is my 5th year. And in year 1, I got a phone call from a constituent that talked to me about this situation. I'm a hunter. I was not happy with the change, but not as a legislator, but back in 1920, I didn't realize there was anything I could do. I didn't like the change. Personally, did not like the change. So it was very interesting. This constituent called me. I didn't know him and asked me to look into it. So I thought about it for a couple of days. I started asking my friends that hunt. I started events around town and around my district. I was talking to people. I'd ask them if they hunted, what their thoughts were. And I was running into no one that liked Saturday. Forward another week, I go to a Jefferson County Fire Chiefs banquet at Oliver Township on a Saturday night. I bring it up to everybody in the room, and there wasn't one person in the room that liked Saturday. And they all told me their stories of how their breakfasts are gone, their fundraisers are gone, their gun raffles are gone, that they made money on that weekend. So I started to think about the aspect of the financial side of this. I knew that it didn't matter to the deer whether they got shot on Saturday or Monday. There was no scientific reason for this at all. And for me, it comes down to the financial side that we as legislators, and this is what I want all my colleagues to understand, is we're here for the whole state. We're not here for a specific hunter. We're here to make decisions that affect everyone. And this decision affected everyone, not just hunters. So you can stand and say that, and I understand, I've talked to some hunters that like the Saturday and have given me the reasons, and I get it. But I know the majority of people want Monday, and it's not just hunters, it's business people, it's firemen, it's volunteers that are giving us their all every day, and that was the best money-making weekend for them, and now it's gone. So that's why we're here today. I don't do it to fight. I specifically stay off Facebook for that reason. I've seen what's gone on here for the last four or 5 years on Facebook, and it just upsets me to no end to see some of the posts that I see. So with that said, I'll let it go on. I do have one question that I would like to ask Steve, Mr. Smith, if we could ask. You brought 2 letters today on Saturday support. But I know that the Game Commission has gotten hundreds, probably thousands of letters in support of Monday. Did you bring any of those to read to us to show that there's both sides being voiced to the Game Commission?
Well, Representative Smith, you're exactly correct. The board has received numerous correspondence over the years from hunters expressing a desire to see it stay at or go back to Monday. Absolutely. And my point in reading those letters was to show how they confirm what we've seen as well in the survey, which is the people who want to see the Saturday stay, their motivations are almost always connected to more opportunity for themselves because it alleviates their concerns with work issues, or more opportunities for their kids. And I could absolutely show you more correspondence where we have hear from hunters who want to see a Monday return. And for them, it's always tradition. Tradition seems to be the driving force there. So that, those correspondence would certainly make it available to you. We have, as you indicated, hundreds, if not thousands of letters across the entire spectrum. But for the majority, they could be broken down into those 2 categories. It's our, by and large, our older hunters who are traditionalists who'd like to see the return to the Monday, and our younger hunters, particularly those with work and family issues, who like the Saturday.
Okay. I appreciate that. I think we as legislators and board members and community need to understand this decision should be thought about on the whole level and not just for one specific hunter or a group of hunters. This has way much more to do than hunting. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Sorry I did not say thank you in the beginning.
No, that is okay. Thank you very much. Rep. Devanzo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really didn't plan on saying much this morning, but when I was sitting Friday night, Saturday night, and I started seeing these emails come in. As a hunter, I was okay with Saturday the first 2 years probably, but then I noticed something. There's nobody in the woods. This year, I hunted Saturday. We have a big light up night parade, so I got to be out of the woods at 1 o'clock. As I'm standing there on the streets of my parade, I look around, we have youth, football team there, cheerleaders there, the Boy Scouts are there. Why aren't these kids in the woods? So if we put this on a Saturday to prioritize participation, we picked the wrong Saturday. We picked the absolute worst day to do this on. Penn State had a home football game. 104,000 people attended Happy Valley that day. You mean to tell me that a third of those people aren't sportsmen that don't hunt? The information that I saw, and this is just blatant ignored. And I'm going to make it quick. I got more stuff here, but I want to be clear to everybody who sent me an email Friday, Saturday, and Sunday telling me that I don't have authority in this decision. I got news for you. We're here 6 years later because we got it wrong. Okay? I'm not saying that maybe Saturday isn't the answer, but the Saturday after Thanksgiving is not the answer. And it's clear. When you have to pull the tax records of Clymer Volunteer Fire Department to show that they got $3,000 more today than they did in 2019, you're taking credit for that? It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the online gaming sales that are going to end soon. Where's this fire department at then? Where's their money coming from? You know, this isn't about hunting. There's a culture here. I remember as a kid going up, we went up 119. We had a place in DuBois. We got the rosters off 119. We had the buckwheat pancakes. We went places. It was different. And I get those times move out. I completely understand it. But we're leaving nothing for the children here today. You know, Sunday I went to my camp. We have a camp, family of ours has a camp up in New Fords. The second day of hunting, Sunday, I counted 28 deer from my house to camp. There's no pressure on the deer. What does that tell you? There's nobody hunting. Nobody hunting. We can bring this in on a Wednesday, and quite frankly, I know my opinion doesn't care. I know it doesn't matter here what's said. Do what you want with it. You're going to anyway. But I'm going to get back to my point. I'm an elected official. I'm not a bureaucrat appointed by the governor to protect the Good Old Boy Network. I'm an elected official. I'm going to represent my hunters, my constituents, because we got it wrong. And I think it's time we really do a deep dive into this game commission, because everything I've seen today, you guys are controlled by outdoor sportsmen. There's an ulterior motive here, and it's not about Monday. And I don't know what it is, but I'm going to dive into it. Someone's got pride, someone's got ego, and they don't want to admit they made the wrong decision. And we're wrong. We are wrong with this. A leader unites people. A leader steps up and says, you know what? We are dividing this state. We are dividing our hunters. It must stop. And today, it must stop. I don't have the answer. Do we do a north and south, north of 80s, one, east, west? I don't know. But we've got to get into the room, and we've got to fix this problem and move forward, because we are losing hunters at a staggering rate. And listen, if all the information I saw is correct, we have a huge problem because we don't have sportsmen. We've lost them at record pace. We have chased out. We've told people that are 55 and older, we don't want you. We've told people that younger, hey, come on in and hunt, but now that they're busy, they're into college, they're not coming back. We've expedited the entry of our hunters.
Thank you, Representative. I apologize to everyone. I'm going to get two more in on this side, and then any other questions, I greatly apologize, but you're going to have to ask them after the meeting is concluded.
Are you serious?
Excuse me? There will be time for you to ask all the questions. I've asked everyone to stay. Representative Hohenstein? And please, I hate to ask,
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. And I'm coming at this from a completely different perspective. I represent the city of Philadelphia. One of the things I do know is there are a lot of hunters that come from Philly to places upstate, Poconos, North Central, where you guys are. So it's an important issue for us too, and it's important to get it right. And as I look at one of the, I guess the two biggest things that I kind of want to figure out here. One is, what's the best way to reverse, like really reverse, the drop in hunter licenses and the people who are going out and getting those licenses? Because, as you said, Commissioner, 34 straight years pretty much of decline, and recently maybe with this change there's a little bit of a balance, but it's still not growth. So how do we grow the hunting community? And then the other thing that I wonder, because we are focused on literally a day in the calendar, a single day out of 365. What I would like to know, especially from the local communities and businesses that have been affected, and I've read the letters from those folks, what is there any counterbalance that's coming in other areas at other times that counterbalances some of these losses? Or what is the actual loss that really is happening in that opening weekend? So those are my two observations and questions, and I'll take whoever wants to answer either of those two things.
Good. Okay. You know, when this was brought forth, I think the problem here is you know, we're talking about organizations that want to not let legislative voices is because of biology and science, and we clearly identified that the actual agency ignored the science that was at the time to make this decision. It was not vetted. It was vetted in a way, and everything that came in said, don't do it. We had made a suggestion initially. Okay, you have all of these tentacles attached to Monday. The Thanksgiving aspect, the Black Friday aspect, that they start the season now on Small Business Saturday. We're steering 500,000 hunters into the woods on Small Business Saturday. We suggested put the Monday back, fix all of the problems that have been created here, that were in here 6 years later, put the Sunday in the next weekend, create a full 2-day weekend, and as potentially if you see a change in the Sunday hunting bill, we get Sunday hunting, put the second day in. And have a full run from Monday all the way through 13 days with a full weekend. So if anybody can't hunt Monday, now you have a full weekend to go out with 4 days later. So there were suggestions, but I think what was concerning is we have reached out to the board on several occasions, our organization, to sit down and talk about this. I've never once had a return contact. Yes, we would like to sit down and meet and discuss this, because there could be some solutions, and maybe a better understanding could come from this of the damages that have happened. And I think that's, you know, there's solutions here, but you can't get them if we don't talk.
Okay. Mr. Kreiner, quickly, please.
Yep, I'll be real quick. Two real quick points, and I think this is very important. I have worked in this business in the Capitol since 1991. I just want to make sure you understand where both the PFSC is coming from and what I've relayed to you is not that we do not want the General Assembly to be part of this process. What I'm saying is I personally believe the structure of government and the legislative process is not always as flexible or as able to manage something that might have to turn on a dime. So I think conversations like today are very important. We are not saying the General Assembly should not be part of it. I think it makes sense. A lot of these points I agree with. We personally think that the Game Commission being able to change this on a dime is the best place for this to be. The second point is just real quick. And I'm not trying to be direct here. I've met one of the individuals here to my right almost 4 years ago at the Game Commission at the board meetings. I love him as a sportsman. I cannot thank you how often I have a chance to talk to him every quarter. I respect him. But the reason I mention those other organizations, why they're so important, I talk to them on a regular basis. Randy, I do respect the fact that you've reached out to the commission and they haven't called you. I take you at your word. You have not called my organization to talk about this, to talk to me over the last 3.5 years. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's just to the point that the committee has had this conversation. I hope we have this conversation every week. I think it's awesome.
Well, thank you both. Rep. Haddock?
Thank you. I'm going to tell you something. My game commission chair is sitting right there. His name's Stanley Knick. I know Stanley for years, and I've reached out to him many times. So when somebody says at this committee here that they haven't talked to the game commission, there are 9 regional directors set up throughout this Commonwealth. And Stanley Knick and I, while we're personal friends, have got in heated arguments over what the commission and what the legislature does. And we stayed friends. And he's here today. So for somebody saying they can't talk to the commission, you have a director wherever you live, and I believe it's out in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County, Mr. Santucci. You should start with that person and open up the line of communications. And then you've been at board meetings, so you have talked to them. You've certainly testified in front of the commission. Well, we talked today about when we moved this, and I'm a traditionalist, and I personally didn't like the move. But in my own camp in Bradford County, we were rejuvenated. In my former camp in Monroe County, they were rejuvenated. More hunters came out. We lost 96,000 hunters in the 5 years to this move. We have lost approximately, if I had the number right during the testimony, 1,000. This move did save the bleeding to our hunters. When I first started, we had 1,300,000. We lost 500,000 hunters since I'm hunting in 50 years. So,
Chair, may I address Mr. Haddock's comment?
No, we're going to let him finish.
I didn't ask a question yet.
Address that.
I didn't ask a question.
No, you can address
I made
after the
comments.
meeting's over.
And part of the reason this worked, it stopped the bleeding. 80% of Pennsylvanians work Monday through Friday. We didn't talk about our labor force. Of the people that work, 80% of people work Monday through Friday. They have to take vacation or sick time if they're lucky enough to have paid leave. 25% of our workforce in Pennsylvania don't have paid leave. So to go hunting on a Monday, they had to take time off and docked pay. We're not talking about the statistics that we have, the hard numbers. So, and one more, and I'm going to ask Director Smith this. In the Title 34, and I've read it, is the Game Commission responsible for economic outcomes of the state of Pennsylvania, or is their mission solely to manage the Game Commission and the animals that they're supposed to protect?
And a quick answer, please.
Complicated issue, but a quick answer would be the section in Title 34 that gives our board the authority says nothing about economic interest. It says the board shall serve and protect the interest of hunters by creating opportunities for the hunting and trapping of wildlife, and that it shall manage wildlife, period. There's no discussion about balancing economic interest at that time, which isn't to say that there's not opportunities where we have been able to do so, and there's certain parts around the state where we've been able to manage wildlife, and the economic impact has been noticeable. Places like Middle Creek, Pymatuming, the Elk area from Benezet all the way to Kettle Creek, there's been opportunities where we have been able to maximize the economic benefit, but that's not what our board is charged with.
Okay, and thank you. Thanks, Rep. Haddock. I appreciate it. Representative Maloney, I'm giving you the last 5 minutes. The meeting will end at 10:30.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 5 minutes doesn't give a whole lot of time for something to all my colleagues here and those that might be watching is very important. there was testimony today that was sort of isolated to some person or person's individual preference or their experience. I did just finish my 52nd year of hunting. I have been a field day director for kids, school director. I came here with a passion to try to help this decline. And to be honest with you folks, I got very, very little support. That support wasn't just minimal with the Game Commission, it was minimal with my own colleagues, staff, you name it. There's a piece of legislation that was signed by Governor Wolf that would address the outcome or at least the exposure to the kids, and that was hunter safety course in school. I got very little support for that bill, and I never got support from the Game Commission, and that's clearly a fact. And I want you to know something, how critical that is, especially for a father who came from Philadelphia, to my Philadelphia colleagues. My dad was raised in an orphanage in Philadelphia with some of the most staunch hunters as kids because he was given the opportunity to come to the country and given and mentored that. We have the mentoring program, which was good. We needed it for adults because many of them didn't have it. But with the 500 school districts in Pennsylvania, you do the math. How many buildings do they have that the Game Commission can walk in and have a hunter safety course, not charge any of the kids by law, and get that exposure out there? So you do the math. It's very embarrassing. So having said that, we heard a lot today. This is business petitions about what happened. You all heard that I truly believe in the facts. I truly believe in verbiage. I am going to go statewide into those commissioners' districts, as my good friend down there said. And you folks will get an opportunity because I think it's very, very important that the facts are out. There is an underlying problem here. The indictment on our own testimonies today are embarrassing to me. Title 34 is to provide for the sportsmen of Pennsylvania. I get the bird watchers. I could probably name more birds than most of you. But here's the point. When you see that decline and you have opportunity, and the number one from the time I came in here, I wanted to fix deer management in the facts of what was going on. This is frustrating from the sportsman's point of view because there is a tremendous lack of truth. And I believe that is very, very important today. Look, there are people here that testified that they were so mad that the Game Commission hired a lobbyist. But we're hearing from a lobbyist. And so let's just keep this stuff in perspective. I know many, many camps. I have hunted all over the state except for the Southwest. Eric, I'm coming over to your area. And here's the point. We can't go anywhere without that conflict at the grocery store or wherever. When that's encouraging to me because that means that people are paying attention and they're afraid of their hunting tradition and heritage in Pennsylvania. And we have known, as I've represented Pennsylvania for years nationally, that there's an underlying problem, the decline of hunters, but there's also ideologues that have infiltrated agencies. This is a known problem across the state of the country. So we have to root that out. We have to figure out why we're not on the same mission. These are real problems, folks. It's not just because the legislature wants to get involved. How about we have the hunters elect their commissioners? Now, that sounds like a great idea to me. I know it's my bill, but the fact of the matter is that's what we heard today. We heard a tremendous amount of localization of a problem, the lack of voice, the lack of concern. And I'm going to end, and I'm going to tell you this. As a good gentleman said here today, he loves a discussion. And we're going to have that discussion statewide. But I want to also prepare you for when the facts and the truth continue to come out from the sportsmen who don't feel served. We have to understand that there must be ears opened and an acknowledgement, with sincere acknowledgement, that they need to be heard and that we need to press forward under Title 34 for the sportsmen of Pennsylvania. Don't ever forget it. I've never changed my passion from the day I came in here, and God willing, I will never change that. It is important, and it has to be addressed. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I gave my time to my colleagues, so I will end this meeting. Thank you all for coming out. Please stay. I know a lot of our members have questions for you. Please stay if you can. If the director and the commissioners can also stay, that would be greatly appreciated for anyone who has questions. I appreciate you coming. This meeting is adjourned.